Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
All right, everybody. Tom Dutta. Hey, that's Tom Dutta like butter, the Quiet Warrior Show. Hey, thanks for being here, everyone. And I got to say thank you because we're live streaming. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, and now Rumble. And it's because of you that the show is growing. We're taping every week in the studio here. We have guests coming through booking agents, through every source. And, well, we couldn't do it without you. So thank you very much. If you're on any of the feeds, particularly the YouTube at Tom Dutta YouTube channel, give it a subscribe and check out this interview after. Give it a like, post a comment. What that does is it gets the analytics noticing it, and then they share this epic interview more. And it is going to be an epic interview, and I say that with a lot of substance because of the guests I have on today. I promise you that the legacy of this guest's work is going to impact you in some way in your life. And I know it has me. Let me tell you a little bit about the guest. He's in the green room, Terry Whalin. Now, Terry's been on the show before. We met through a connection. It'll come out on the conversation on the show, so I won't steal that thunder. But he changed my life with some of the things he's taught me. Also, my first book that was published, you'll see it in the back there if you have the video feed on now. And I did that through a publisher out of New York, and that's where I first met Terry. And it's been a great ride since between the two of us. We had him on before, and we did an interview about a book that everybody should get. It's called The 10 Myths that hold back authors from success. I think that I got that right. 10 publishing myths, insights every author needs to succeed. Well, we did it as an audio only, and I said, Terry, we got to have you back because we want to do the video of it. There's just so much more power to that. Let me tell you a little bit about Terry, and then we'll bring him on. Terry Whalin. We got to find out what the W stands for. He's an editor and writer. He's worked with hundreds of authors and published multiple bestsellers. Let that sit for a minute, everyone. He's formerly worked as a magazine editor, literary agent, and he's currently an acquisitions editor for Morgan James Publishing, around about 12 years now. He's written more than 60 books on a variety of topics. That's 60. Many people don't write one, several of which have sold over 100,000 copies. His magazine work has appeared in more than 50 publications. Whalin has now an online training course for authors called Write a Book Proposal, and is an active member of the American Society of Journalists and Authors. He currently lives in Southern California. I was just joking with him. I said, did you move? Because in the previous show, he was somewhere near Denver, Colorado. Great to see Terry's grounded in California. Let's bring him on. Welcome, Terry, to the show.
Tom, wonderful to be here with you. I appreciate this opportunity. Yeah,
it is fabulous opportunity, man. Hey, listen, let's just get to know each other a minute about what's going on today. So you're in Southern California. What's the weather like? I mean, what's going on in California? You're in a great state there.
Well, some people think it's great. Some people think it's a little on the loose liberal side. One of my friends years ago told me that everything loose rolls to the west. That's why he lived in Florida. So, but no, it's a great state. We live here because our youngest daughter lives 10 minutes away with her family. So that's why we live out here. But we've also escaped the snow and ice of Colorado. I got rid of my snow boots and my shovel and my ice pick and all that stuff.
Terry, you're warming me up over here. So I'm in the west coast of British Columbia, Vancouver, Metro Vancouver, Canada, a place called Port Moody, which I love. You know, Terry, we're so close to the trails here. You can literally, I live in what's called a village, and everything is here. You can walk to get everything, your butcher, your groceries, your services. Wow. But then my wife Anna and I will walk a few minutes down the way, and we're into what are called the trails. And there's miles and miles of trails through the forest around what's called Burrard Inlet. And so for the audience, because we're international here, Burrard Inlet is a body of water that if you literally put a boat in it, Terry, and you headed out towards the ocean, you could get to the Pacific Rim, to Asia. Just incredible. The in the scenery here. So it's good to know that you're unfreezing out there and we're getting some of those cool currents down from your area up here in the north. Now, we did talk before and something's changed, and we're going to go into a place called Plato's Garden. So are you ready to go into Plato's Garden with me?
Sure.
Okay. Everybody, I'm smiling because Terry's such a great guy. He doesn't even probably know what that means. And he said, sure. So let me just set that up, Terry. We're just going to put a quick bumper video on here, and then I'll get us going in Plato's Garden. So stand by. All right. Well, Terry, welcome to Plato's Garden. Hey, everybody, what would it be like to get to know Terry Whalin in a very different way? So we're in Plato's Garden now. Plato's Garden was apparently where Plato and Aristotle used to hang out, and they would have what was called critical thinking, different styles, different thinking. And academia, basically, back then, Plato's Garden was apparently the first in the Western world academic institution. Pretty awesome. Now, how do I know all this, Terry? I'm second year of a doctoral degree through Middlesex University in London. And in that degree, one of the things I've learned is that people in business like myself, I'm an industry CEO turned podcaster and educator, we don't do this very well. What critical thinking is, Terry, is where we talk about three areas in our conversations. One, we'll call it the macro. So what is the macro or the global influences of your public work, everything that you've done? What was going on in the world? The second area is what we call mezzo. Mezzo is the sector. So your sector might be publishing or whatever. So what influenced you from what was happening in the sector as you created the work that you've done in the world? And then the last one, Terry, the last year I like a lot, it's called micro. So micro is about you, man. It's about the man, Terry Whalin. And so why these all come together in critical thinking is if we have conversations and we cover all those areas, not just, hey, look how great Terry is and here's all his accolades and successes in business, then we might find a deeper meaning in the context of work and learn more about your story. So does that make some sense to you?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So we're going to put something on screen here for a minute just to have some fun with you before we get into conversation. That was the show art that I put together for this, but there's a book on the screen there. So Terry, why don't you hold that book up and just read out the title to us? 10
Publishing Myths, Insights Every Author Needs to Succeed.
That's awesome. So that's a great book. Thank you, Terry. And everybody, we'll talk about how you can get that. But I read that book, and when we had Terry on before, we did a deep dive into it. I read it. I gave it a 5-star review, and it blew my mind. There's a lot of stuff in it that I didn't know as an author. So Terry, let's get into Plato's Garden here. I'm going to start with maybe something that might be in the micro area. So it's about you. So in learning about you, you had a pivotal wake-up moment as an author that changed your approach to publishing. Share that experience with us, sort of how that all came about.
Yeah, Tom, that was in 2007. I was a literary agent in Arizona. I had a little literary agency, and I got an invitation from Mark Victor Hansen, the co-author on Chicken Soup for the Soul. He invited me out to California. He was having this event called Mega Book Marketing University. And he had me come as an agent. So I took pitches from the people that participated during the event. But I also sat there with 400 people and listened to the speakers. And at that point in my lifetime, I'd done about 50 books for traditional publishers. So publishers make pretty books. They get them in bookstores, all that kind of thing. But then I was getting advances for those books from traditional publishers. And so when you get an advance once a year or maybe even quarterly, you get a statement from your publisher about how your book's doing. When I ever got my statements, they were always negative royalty statements because they weren't selling. And
I'm putting my hand up with you here. I've been through that experience, by the way.
well, during that event, I listened to what it takes to be successful and how can you really start moving books. And it was almost like I woke up during that conference because I realized how little I personally was doing to sell my own book. Back then, I had a terrywhalin.com website, but I wasn't doing anything else. And another one of the speakers at that conference was Jack Canfield, the other co-author on Chicken Soup for the Soul, who wrote this book. It's a best-selling book called The Success Principles. And I got that book and I read that book. And the very first success principle is one that most people don't want to do because it says, I will take 100% responsibility for my own success.
Yeah.
None of us want to take 100% responsibility. We want our publisher, our agent, our publicist, somebody other than us to do that work. But I decided during this event that I was going to change and I was going to take 100% responsibility for my own success. So I started to blog. Started blogging late in 2007.
Yeah.
Today, my blog has over 1,700 entries in it. And about a year ago, I found an article that had my name listed in it of the top 27 content producers. And to my surprise, I was one of those top 27 people, along with Seth Godin and Ryan Holiday and Jeff Godin, people like that maybe you've heard of.
A little shameless plug there, a little applause. I mean, you're such a humble guy. Just going to jump in there. You're a humble guy, but man, to make that list and everybody, what you're seeing on the screen, and Terry will give it back to you in a second, as I put this together, it says connect with Terry. And if you're on the audio, we'll put this in the show notes later. But here are some of the links. And I think you just mentioned your blog. You can see the blog link there. So we'll put this back up in a little bit, everybody, but you can take a snapshot of that and connect with Terry. So Terry, how old were you when this happened and you discovered this sort of fame that you stumbled into?
Oh, this was 20 years ago. So I was in my 50s. And
yeah.
So I started to change, and then social media came along and I started doing social media. And, I have like over 175,000 followers on Twitter, and I have
wow.
LinkedIn. I have over 19,000 connections on LinkedIn. I just decided to use these different avenues that I have on a regular, consistent basis.
Yeah.
And my whole ability to sell books and changed, by doing that kind of thing.
Yeah. Pretty amazing. I have something here in the studio. I'm going to put it up on the screen here for those who like to look at things, although you have to have a magnifying glass. So Terry, don't worry about reading it. But I've done my homework. This was the original press release from your publisher, Morgan James in New York, about the 10 Myths book. So if you'll just bear with me, I'm going to read a paragraph and then we'll get into another side of this. It says, December 17, 2019, Morgan James new release, 10 Publishing Myths, Insights Every Author Needs to Succeed by W. Terry Whalin. The paragraph I'm going to read here is evocative, I think. Because of the common misconceptions and conflicting information about publishing, many authors are left confused when it's time to publish their book. These authors often focus only on the content of their book, but either ignore or do not fully understand the business side of publishing. While there's nothing wrong with ambitious authors having big dreams for their books, they also need to be realistic, well-informed about the publishing industry they are entering. 10 Publishing Myths explains everything authors need to know about publishing so that they can make their dreams reality. And then one more thing I'll add. The 10 Myths is designed to give authors a full, realistic picture of the publishing process and to market their book. Their book is entering in the market that they're entering. So Terry, I'm going to just share something with you from my experience, and then we'll get back into you. When I submitted my manuscript, like many in 2017 for my first book, I was a new author, and nobody really taught me what being an author was. And what I've learned since then is that many authors I've met, especially through my radio show, will say things like, my book's not selling. I'm not making any money. And there's almost this thread of somebody's going to do it for me. So let's get back into the micro part of the conversation. In that book, you talk about these myths. So among the 10 that you've explored, what do you think which one do you see as the most misleading for first-time authors?
Well, whether they're first time or whether they've been around a long time like me, one of the most misleading myths is that I will make a lot of money with their book. And because what happens, I mean, I've been in publishing for decades here, Tom, and what I've found is that much of the process is nothing that I can control as an author.
Yeah.
And so, sure, my publisher may get my book in the bookstore, but are people going to go in there and buy it? I mean, there's a lot that's just totally outside of my control as an author. So what I try to do in 10 Publishing Myths is give people practical steps that they can take, and they can actually take action and do if they publish a book. I mean, the statistics tell us there's over 11,000 new books that come out every day. So there's a lot of people that need this information.
That's mind blowing, man. 11,000. Holy cow.
I mean, that includes all the self-publishing stuff, but there's a lot of people out there that, throw their book out there and they have no idea what they need to be doing in order to achieve success.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. One of the things that I experienced, again, engaging with the publisher that you're with at that time, was they were very, very much asking me about what my platform is and what we're on social media. And part of me is going like, what? You're so nosy. Why are you asking me all that stuff? And what's interesting is back then I really had a platform that was starting. I wasn't where I am today. And so what I've realized, and I put you back on the screen here, this slide I created, that everyone, if you just see here, this is part of Terry's platform. He's on social media, Twitter. He's got his blog. He's got a course that he teaches, and so on. He's written many books. So someone looking at this and writing a book for the first time, Terry, I think can learn from you, because you live by example, that it's about the other things you wrap around the book. Last thing I'll say to you about my experience, because we're storytelling, is I attended an author training session that your publisher, I should say our publisher, but I look up to you because you're a literary agent there. And it sounds kind of mysterious, right? I watch a lot of Mission Impossible. I think, oh, I got Agent Whalin on the line here. And he's this guy who's kind of sourcing out. By the way, I also heard that you can maybe tell us, but there's thousands of manuscripts that come into the publishing industry. Maybe you can give us some numbers when I give it back to you, but like only a 1% or only a small amount are actually looked at. And bigger publishers, they never even respond. And then there's these hybrid publishers and all this, so we can get into that. But I remember looking at Morgan James and the first statement that came back, which was the negative. And somebody said to me in the training there that, maybe you'll make enough money to buy dinner for your family. Maybe that's just what an average author might make, but it's how you monetize that book. So let me just give it back to you on this. Your experience kind of is traditional publishing and self-publishing. How between those two, both the industry shifted. How can writers determine which path best suits their goals? Which way should they go?
Well, the best way to get published, I think, is where you work with somebody else rather than self-publish. I mean, the average self-published book sells a couple hundred copies throughout the lifetime of the book.
Really?
So so that's what they've proven. So if you really want to have success with your book, then you want to work with somebody else. You want to work with a team that helps you get your book out there in the best kind of way, and you want to work with somebody that's got experience. I mean, every publisher has negative statements out there about, but I always recommend that people write the name of that publisher along with the word complaints or scam or something like that into Google and just see what you find out. I mean, sure, Morgan James has a few, but we've been around 20 years. We're starting our 21st year as a publishing house.
Yeah.
We've published over 25 million books, over 6,000 titles.
Wow.
They've been on the New York Times list 29 different times, on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list over 100 times. Well, you can't do that kind of thing if you're not selling books in the brick and mortar bookstores. So we have a track record that we can really stand on and say, hey, sure, there's some hoops you have to jump through to get to us.
Yeah.
But you ask about numbers. I mean, we receive over 5,000 submissions every year at Morgan James.
That's a big number.
And
wow.
we only publish maybe 180, 200 books a year.
Yeah.
So there's a constant sorting process that we're going through to try to figure out who are the best authors, where are the best books, where are the ones that we should do, because we know as a publishing house that we're investing a lot of money into these books to publish them, get them all done, get them out there into the bookstore, all that. So got to make wise decisions which books you're going to publish.
Yeah, that's great insights. Everybody, you want to connect with Terry, we'll put the information at the end and just have a conversation about what he's doing and about this model. I just want to give a support there that the Morgan James publishing model is I think it's referred to as the entrepreneur's publisher. And what's interesting to me is I remember like it was yesterday, Terry, because it attached to my heart, my emotion, that somebody had connected me to meet Morgan James Publishing out of New York. And I asked to speak to the founder. Now, I'm a CEO from industry, so I don't have ego, but that's kind of my peer group. And I was testing the waters going like, let's see if the founder even gives a crap about. And your founder, David Hancock, David came on a call with me and he talked to me and he heard me out. And after that call, without even looking further at too much, I committed to doing my first book with you. And I found that from the very beginning, everyone, and you can test this out yourself, I was in the driver's seat. I've had horror stories from friends of mine. One fellow submitted a manuscript to a big publisher and said he had 40,000 changes recommended in the manuscript. Here's another story for you about somebody who said to me their book was taken in to be made into a movie, and then they realized, looking at the fine print of the contract, that they didn't have any control and all the money went somewhere else, not to them. Little things like that are important. Let's get you to hold that book up again. We're talking about that book. Read out the title again. 10
Publishing Myths, Insights Every Author Needs to Succeed.
All right, that's pretty cool. Terry Whalin here, everybody. So Terry, let's get into Mezzo. Mezzo is the sector. So the context around this would be, like, for example, when Morgan James Publishing was created, I might ask the founder, what was going on in the sector that influenced you to create that model? So in this here, I'm just going to throw this out. In the book, you mentioned Mythbuster actions, MBAs, which is kind of cool, for each chapter. So highlight one that's been a game changer for authors you've worked with. Give us an example.
Yeah, I think a Mythbuster action would be to encourage the author to create, a product, part of their book, something that they give away if somebody gives them an email address. And you want to use those email addresses in a newsletter, because that's something that every author controls, is their own newsletter. It's not on a rented property like Facebook or Twitter or Rumble. Those places could shut me down tomorrow if I violated their terms. They could kick me off of there. I wouldn't have any say. I'd lose all the people that I had on there, all that kind of thing.
Wow.
Where your newsletter is something that only you control. And so that's one of the things that I encourage every author to start and do and get it out there. Sure, it'll be small when you start, but it's something proactive that you can do to be touching your readers and touching your audience out there.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I love newsletters, and I notice that more and more. And with I don't know if you have an opinion on AI, but with the implementation of some of these advanced thinking tools, if you're a bad writer, like I'm not the greatest writer, but I can write something, throw it into my chat GPT and say, look, here's my voice. Just perfected professional, make it sound like an editor might. And so you can actually do things a lot more efficiently. What is your thought on AI and how that's impacted the publishing industry?
I think it's okay. I haven't used it a lot myself. I think it's great for research.
Yeah.
As far as original writing, I'm not too keen on that. I think that each of us should be doing our own original writing in that area. And I that's pretty much what I think about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
What to say about AI?
I agree with you on that for sure. Hey, everyone, when I collaborate with AI, I don't say, "Hey, I write me a chapter for a book." It's no different. Actually, Terry, the other way I look at it is, when I did my book, I had somebody working beside me as an editor. When I did my first book
Sure.
with your publisher, our publisher, and most people can't write effectively. They're not great writers. This is just general. I mean, I come from business, and I thought I knew how to write. So I would write something and then hand it over to my editor and say, okay, they would go through it and give me suggestions. And together we collaborated. Well, I use AI that way. I will write something. I wrote a short story the other day. It was about 800 words. And I threw it into AI. And then I said, if you were a publisher looking to pick this up and publish it, what might you critique about it that's good, and where can it be improved? And AI gave me some really strong feedback, like an editor would. So, yeah. Let's go back to the book, The Mythbuster. Give us another MBA, another Mythbuster action that's out of that book.
I guess I haven't thought about these in a while, but another Mythbuster action would be to to really be proactive on social media, to figure out what your stance would be. How are you going to post? What tools are you going to use?
Yeah.
Are you going to be on Goodreads, for example? I have people over on Goodreads that read my blog, for example. It's not where I would read my blog, but people read my blog over on Goodreads because it's connected over there.
Yeah.
And I have 5,000 friends on Goodreads, which is the most you can have. I didn't know they had a maximum too. And I've written 900 reviews on Goodreads.
Wow.
And so those
that's cool.
Get a lot of attention out there when I do that kind of thing.
Yeah, everybody, teaching moments here, Goodreads. We'll put in the show notes, but if people haven't heard of it, no, I didn't know about it until somebody told me years ago. So it's goodreads.com.
Yeah.
And again, trading back stories here, because my brain goes on journeys when you say something that I have friends, and it happened to me. You put a review up on Amazon, and sometimes that review may not be there in the future. Things change. And the other thing I experienced is Amazon requires you to be a current customer. In other words, you have to make some transactions. Because to be fair to Amazon, they're not just, hey, come and post your reviews about books there, right? Yeah. They have a business model just like we do in publishing, so they have to make money. And so I've always published reviews there, but I publish them on Goodreads as well. I just learned from you about the blog piece connecting it. So
we try to teach our authors at Morgan James not even to use the word Amazon. Tom,
interesting.
Imagine, because most bookstore owners, retailers, believe that Amazon has destroyed their business over the years, right or wrong. So
wow.
If you overuse that word, the national sales reps will notice, and that can get your book banned from being in a Chapter Indigo or Barnes and Nobles or Books A Million, any of those places. So the leaders all talk to each other.
Yeah.
So you got to be wise about what you do. And so when you sell your book, you don't just send them to Amazon. I mean, maybe that's a good place for you, but you also want to do what David Hancock talks about, sharing the love. So, I send them so they can get it from me directly. They can get it from Barnes and Nobles. They can get it from Books A Million. They can get it from their independent bookstore. Give them a choice. People like the choice. And part of the reason that I encourage people to do social media, and why publishers are really interested in your social media numbers, is because we've pretty much proven that for somebody to buy a book, they need to hear about it 7, 8, 9, maybe a dozen times before
I
they
see.
actually reach in their wallet and buy the thing. So part of what you're doing on your social media is just telling people about the benefits of why in the world they should read your book. Now you're not saying buy my book because nobody likes to see those messages, but you're stressing why they should buy your book in that process.
I love that a lot. And again, going back to what you taught us, everybody, we're here with Terry Whalin, teaching moments on the show. Come back, watch it, listen to this part. It's so good that for those who have said to me, hey, I published my book, is not selling, and they sort of off the cuff are blaming the publisher, what you're teaching us here is what are you doing to monetize, or what are you doing to, express and get the word out about the book? Social media is a big one. And there's a lot of people who don't use that.
And I always
channel.
tell people it's never too late. It's never too late to start. I mean, I had one of my friends contact me the other day and say, I haven't done anything for a couple of, my book's been out for a couple of years. I haven't done anything. Is it too late?
Yeah.
My answer was no, it's not too late. I mean, you wrote this historical novel about World War II. There's a lot of people that are interested in World War II. Just start talking to people about it. That's what it is,
absolutely, Terry. It's like, it's like with my book, I went for a period of years because I had an accident. I fell on my head and had a pretty bad concussion, MBT, brain injury, they call it. And it put me out for 3 years, man. And it was life-changing. I fell on my faith. I prayed to God just to get me through it. If you knew me back then, I couldn't, talk properly, couldn't even walk straight.
Wow.
Today, I live with double vision and some light sensitivity, but I still have a lot of fun because I'm alive. I'm invincible. But I was stressing about this thing. My book was climbing. Shameless plug here. My book became #1 in 2 countries. We did an early release through your publisher, and I'm 10 reviews away from 200. And people say, how many reviews does a book get? And maybe you can give us that answer. How many reviews does the average book get?
It depends on what the author does.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times I'll go by. I mean, there's a business book, another podcast that I'm going to be on here before too long that was produced. I looked up their book. It came out like in May. Here we are in November, and they had 0 reviews.
Exactly.
Well, what Robert Cialdini, who wrote a book, best-selling, he's an American psychologist that wrote this book called Influence. He's said publicly that 98% of the people that buy a product online have read a review before they buy the book, before
Exactly.
they buy that product. So if you have 0 reviews, you're really not helping yourself, So just
absolutely
give your book away to some friends.
Yeah.
Ask them to write you a review. Get some things going. There's a verse in the book of James that says, "You have not because you ask not." So
there you go.
David Hancock boils that down to "Don't ask, don't get." That's his line all the time. But
all true.
We can say no too if you ask something that we're not going to do. But you as an author can change all kinds of things.
Exactly.
Just by asking.
Yeah, I know, Terry, you're teaching us things that I think innately many of us know, but we don't. It's a barrier. And going back to what I was starting to say to you about, so I had this concussion, I had to come through, which I did, thank God. But the book, I was stressing on my book. However, throughout the time I was, trying to recover through my concussion, I still did my podcast and mentioned my book. I still would get, I'd buy 100 copies from the publisher and get those out in circulation to people, just asking them to, hey, can you read this and tell me what you think about it? Keeping up on social media. And what you said was remarkable, that if you think your book is dead, and I was taught this through education from you and others, 3, 4, 5, 7 years down the road, a book you wrote can become a bestseller. It can become something that climbs to a level that you never expected, right?
Absolutely. Here's a question for you, Tom. Can somebody get your ebook version of your book for free?
my ebook, my digital. They
The
could.
digital of the Quiet Warrior. Can they get that from?
That would be considered called. That's the Kindle version. Is that what we're talking about?
Well, no, because here's what I'm going to tell you, and Morgan James can help you with this.
Yeah.
About 2 years ago, we've learned as a publisher that if somebody gets the ebook version of your book, even
Yeah.
if they get that for free, there's a high probability that they're going to turn and buy the print copy of the book. So
Wow.
our author support team, and I'll send you the link after this call,
Yeah.
but we've got a little form that you can fill out, and our author support team will build a web page for your book that'll have the cover, it'll have a name, have some type about the book, and a big
That's
button
cool.
that says free ebook. So let's say 100 people went over there, downloaded your book. Well, you're driving people to buy the print book just by giving away this free ebook. And we'll give you those email addresses, which, Amazon or Barnes and Nobles, none of those places will give you the email addresses. So you can use this tool as a way to build your email list, drive print book sales just by giving away a free ebook version of your book. That's kind of a new thing that we're doing with all of our books at Morgan James.
Hey, everybody, you never know what you're going to get on the Quiet Warrior Show. And this is Terry Whalin being awesome. I heard of that maybe, but again, because of where I was at with my head. That's fantastic, Terry. Send me the link. But just on that, everybody, we're here to share not only about Terry's book, The 10 Myths, but help you become more successful authors. So Morgan James Publishing, Terry's connected Terry. These things are out there and available, but they're not always available from other publishers. Let me put this on the screen again. Just tell us about what those links are. Just explain it to the audience.
The first link is the one that's running across the bottom of the screen, publishingoffer.com. That's where you can get this book of mine for only $10, along with over $200 of bonuses. It's and that includes the shipping. So that's just a way that I'm really trying to get my book out into as many hands as possible. People can follow me on Twitter. People can go by my blog. I blog every week, and then they can also get a copy of Book Proposals That Sell. That's another book that I wrote as a frustrated acquisitions editor, and that last link takes you to this book funnel page that I was telling you about, Tom. It's a way that they can get the book for free.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Let me go back there to putting on the screen, everybody, with Terry Whalin, his book, 10 Publishing Myths. Again, this was done in 2019. Terry, when we were in the green room, you said something about Jerry Jenkins, the forward. Can you just talk about that for a minute, what you meant by that?
Yeah, Jerry Jenkins is a long-term friend of mine. He's written 21 New York Times bestsellers. He sold over 70 million books. Jerry was actually the author of the Left Behind book. Now, he was the co-author of the Left Behind book with Tim LaHaye. That book came out over 20 years ago. It sold over 60 million copies. I mean, just phenomenal. What Jerry writes about in the forward of the book is that book here, over 20 years after the fact, continues to sell 20,000 copies a month. I mean, it's phenomenal.
Holy cow!
And when the book came out, Left Behind, Jerry sent it to me, and I went on some plane ride, and I was reading this book, and it starts out where half the people on a 747 disappear, and their clothes are there, but they're not physically there. And I thought, how hokey is this? Really, you got to be kidding me. But then I got hooked on the characters, and I read all those books. I think there were 12 or 13 of them. It's amazing the way those books have gone, and they're still going. That's the interesting thing. And Jerry wasn't a new writer. I mean, I think he writes in this forward how many books he'd published, but over 100 books that he published before he wrote Left Behind.
That's incredible, man. Again, everybody, you got to get the book that we're talking about here, The 10 Myths, and in the forward, there's some information about that. Hey, Terry, let's get back into Plato's Garden and just explore another. This is again is the book itself, the another myth. Can you even if you have to open it and read one, but what's another myth out there that authors?
Oh, there's lots of them. Another myth is that I can't call myself a writer unless I publish a book, because the truth is, if you write at all, whether you write online, whether you write a journal, or
Yeah.
whether you publish in magazines, you should call yourself a writer, because you are. I mean, you're actually doing it day in and day out, and I think that's definitely a myth.
Yeah. And then this thing about self-publishing. So I'm not sure if you can comment on this, but some might say that self-publishing isn't at the highest quality of writing, because if you just follow me with this thought, that if I have a manuscript, Terry, and I have to send it to your publisher or to our publisher, again, Morgan James Publishing is my publisher too. Terry, if I have to send it to you, so going back to what you said, and I'll bring in this other thought. So critical thinking here, everybody. We're just connecting the dots. Terry told us that Morgan James will get 5,000 or so manuscripts a year, and they maybe publish 180. So think about that, Terry, that I'm sending in a manuscript to you, and I've written it. It has to pass muster somehow, the criteria. So I want you just to talk about that. What makes it get to the 180? And then on the other side of it, I could take that and just self-publish it, and it could be. I guess what I'm trying to say is I believe that when you take it to a publisher, whether it's Morgan James or any other publisher, you're held to the highest standards because you're up against the competition. So therefore, when I get published, I can say with pride, Terry Whalin accepted my book through Morgan James Publishing, and that's what I put out in the world. I'm published by Morgan James Publishing, and I believe that people look at that in a very different way. It's like, wow, you're one of the 1% that actually got in because of the quality of your work. What's the criteria that gets it to the 180? And any thoughts on what I just said? You can disagree with any of it.
I think part of the criteria is looking at the author, make sure you're the right kind of author, and then looking at the content of the book and seeing if it's the kind of book that we would publish. And the difference between self-publishing and something like Morgan James is, if you self-publish, it's all 100% on you. You have to find somebody to design your cover, design the interior, put it up on Amazon or however you're going to sell it. You have to find somebody to do all that.
Yeah.
Where with Morgan James, our books are being sold into 98% of the bookstores in North America, including the brick and mortar stores. So the other day I was looking for one of our covers, Tom. The very first place I found it was at Target.com, because we sell books at Target.
Yeah, I've seen mine online. I Googled it and it's in Target.
Yeah. So that's the difference right there. That's
Gotcha.
the simple difference. But you want people to find it everywhere and be able to go get it wherever they're going to get it. And you want a quality book. I mean, when we were working on 10 Publishing Myths, we sent that cover out to our sales team, and they gave us some feedback about the cover. And so some of the little details, even on 10 Publishing Myths, got changed and tweaked and improved because we get that kind of input. You don't get that when you self-publish. You just take a look at it and you say, oh yeah, this is good.
Very true.
Out it goes. Yeah.
Very, very true. I'm just turning my head here in the studio. They can't really see it, but I'm so proud of let's see if I can put a different shot on here. Yeah, everybody, you can see just in the top corner there it's got my picture on the cover about my book that was done through Morgan James. And man, Terry, you're bringing me back, dude. I mean, it's bringing me back to the experience. That's what we do on the show here, is create this experience that when I had my cover done, I remember the first call with the publisher, Morgan James, and it was just entrepreneurial visioning call. And I felt first of all, we talked about pricing of the book, and then the cover came up. They had within literally a day 4 versions of that cover. And like you said, you did, I sent it out to my network. I sent it out to my CEO buddies. I sent it out to my friends and family. We ran a competition to vote online, like a poll. We ended up with a little tweak here and there. What was also interesting on my cover is they told me, because I wanted my picture on the cover, that they were honest with me. They said, usually we don't accept pictures for the first book's cover because we sometimes get low quality pictures. And I went into a studio and I had my photo done. It's my avatar or my brand, The Quiet Warrior, has deep meaning. But what I really liked about that, Terry, and what you said is dealing with a publisher like Morgan James, for example, is you get brutally honest feedback. You get the facts. Self-publishing, you don't. You're on an island. So I just want to say I'm honored to have you on the show and talking about all this. Let's get into one more piece in Plato's Garden. Everyone, we're here with Terry Whalin. Put this in the macro category. This is like the global, okay? What's going on in the macro of the world. So the landscape of publishing evolved, it's changed. And I know people's opinions differ. COVID and things change, right? So how anything at all, how today's authors should adapt to ensure they reach the widest audience, and how has the industry changed, and are the rules different today for authors trying to be successful in it?
Yeah, that's a good question, Tom. It does continue to change. People change. The publisher changes. Prices have gone up. The price of paper is more expensive since the pandemic. I mean, all kinds of things like that have happened. But what I'd tell you from my own study and continual involvement in the publishing business is that when ebooks came out, everybody thought that ebooks were going to take over print, and print was going to disappear. Well, the other day, it's been over a year or two now, I was listening to Marcus Duhay when he was the chief executive officer of Penguin Random House, the biggest publisher in the world. And what he was saying during this webinar I was watching is that it's the best time to be in publishing since Gutenberg invented the printing press.
Really?
And that statistically, worldwide, it's 85% print, 15% digital. So these print books that we have are not going away, folks. They're going to continue to be there. Young people are buying them. Old people are buying them. It's still a key part of the fabric of the publishing business.
That's incredible. I mean, I don't know if this is even a parallel, but I'm thinking about vinyl records. You know, the whole shift in moving to digital. But my daughter, she's in New Brunswick, by the way. My daughter just graduated from university, Terry, in environmental engineering. I'm so proud of her. Kalinda's her name. Wow. You know, chip off the old block. I hope one day she maybe writes her own book. But, you know, she just bought a portable record player and is starting a collection of vinyl records. Now, there's an example. You know, I got rid of all my vinyls, but they're coming back. And you know, when in my studio, and I have your book because I've read it and done a review for you, I like to have the physical book to hold. And busy executives, I know a lot of people, because I also coach and teach executives, they like to scrunch up the books and stick it in their briefcase or take it with them on an airplane. And the physical book is so much more delightful to read for many. My wife prefers the physical books. If I buy her something, she wants the actual book to hold. And maybe I'm going to look into that, because I studied a lot of neuroscience through my recovery, Terry, about what happens in the brain when you're actually, I'm going to do that, because there's got to be something to it, whether it releases oxytocin or dopamine or whatever. There's got to be some connection to physical. I know in the training industry, this is just coming out of my head, about types of learning. There's what's called kinesthetic learning. So we can be audible learners, visual learners, but people like kinesthetic is the art of movement. So to actually hold a book, touch it, feel it, flip it, move it, that's kinesthetic. And so if you add in that to the experience of reading, it raises the retention rate of what you read. That's how it is in the training business. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating stuff.
Some people like to, David Hancock's talked about this. He likes to listen to the audiobook at the same time that he's reading the print book. So that's what another trick that people do to try to get greater.
That's interesting. I'll have to try that. I bet you he's got a can of Mountain Dew in the other hand or something. That's why. That's why he has to listen, because he's got the other hand busy. Hey, I'm going to humanize you a little bit here. There is a book, the audiobook I did listen to. That was incredible, Terry. Billy Graham, it comes to mind. Tell us about the work you did with Billy Graham, because I think it's another area that defines you as a human being.
Well, I've had great opportunities through the years to interview and meet different people. It was really over 30 years ago. I was associate editor at Decision Magazine. Back when the office was in Minneapolis. We were doing 1.8 million copies of the magazine every issue. Phenomenal place. I mean, this nondescript place in Minneapolis, they pull 6 or 7 semis full of mail out of that place every day. It was incredible.
Wow.
And once a month, when I worked at Decision, we could skip lunch and go into the prayer room and see the letters that people write to Billy Graham. And I mean, they answer these letters, but they put them also in that prayer room. Phenomenal things that people would pour out their hearts to Mr. Graham. I covered Franklin Graham's first overseas crusade. I was with him. I was one of a dozen people down in Managua, Nicaragua with him.
Wow.
Phenomenal experience. I'm not there anymore. And, there's a whole different story about that. A lot of people stay a long time that work for Billy Graham. One of my friends, Tom Phillips, that left the same day that I did, said to me that God was freeing me from working at Billy Graham so I could work for the whole body of Christ. And that's really what happened to me. When I left the association, my writing exploded. I wrote all kinds of books for other people and everything. But the book that you're referring to is a book that Bethany House originally published called Men of Faith, but then it was out of print. And a number of years ago, Mr. Graham was in poor health, and I thought kind of selfishly to myself, this is really going to be a bad deal for me when Billy Graham passes, because I don't even have a book about the man in the bookstore. But I was working at Morgan James, just like I am now, a New York publishing house. So we had to key in the book, actually. Didn't even have the type for the book. And so I completely updated, rewrote my old book. I got Luis Palau, who's a long-term friend of mine and passed here recently to write the foreword for the book. I got endorsements from people like Philip Yancey, Johnny Erickson Tata, Mike McIntosh, Skip Heiser, people like that.
Yeah.
And I got my old book back out into the bookstore. And the audiobook is, I think what you were referring to, is also out there. The audio version of my Billy Graham book. I listen to audiobooks, and I realize that some audiobooks have something a little different in those audiobooks. For example, Billy Crystal, the comedian, when he did his memoir, started every chapter in front of a live audience. And so I thought, hey, I wonder what I could do different with my Billy Graham book to kind of make a little impact. So I did a little Google search, and I found this version of Just As I Am that the Gaithers were singing. And Cliff Barrows and George Beverly Shea, they were both alive back then, and they were sitting there singing too. So I clipped out about 6-10 seconds of that audio, but then I needed permission, right, to be able to use it.
Yeah.
Well, years ago, I worked at Howard Books, which is an imprint of Simon & Schuster, and Gloria Gaither was one of our authors. And so I hadn't connected with her in years, but I still had her email address. So I reached out to Gloria Gaither and told her about my Billy Graham project, sent her the little clips, and I asked for royalty-free permission to be able to use those clips. Now, that's back to what we were talking about. Don't ask, don't get, right?
Yeah.
So I put it all out there, and I asked.
Right.
In 24 hours, Tom, I got permission to use these little clips.
I mean, that's huge. People don't know the significance of how big that is.
So I sent them off to this guy who was doing my audiobook, and he read the book. I didn't read my own audiobook, but I had to listen to it about 4 times to get all the words straightened out in the audiobook. The final time that I was listening to my own audiobook, I was sitting there at my desk just weeping, listening to these words, because the first part of every chapter comes on with a little part of
It
that
does.
hymn,
Yeah.
and then it goes into it. And I was thinking, hey, somebody could listen or read my little biography about Billy Graham, a biography of America's greatest evangelist, and they could make a statement of faith just listening to that book.
Yeah, it's
And
amazing.
so there are fantastic things that can happen with your work if you do it and then get it out there into the world so people can have access to it.
Yeah, Terry, what a story. Everybody, Terry Whalin. I mean, the thing about you, Terry, is you're so humble, but you're such a legend. If you look at everything you've done, a few things that came out of your story that you just told that tweaked me in my head was I just listened to, or I'm listening right now to Al Pacino's memoir, and it's an audiobook. And man, I have never listened to him narrating a book, but my wife and I were listening it in the car. We actually were going to a show at the Queen Elizabeth Theatre downtown Vancouver called the Book of Mormon, which you might have heard of.
Sure.
It's hilarious. Won 9 Tonys. What a crazy show! And we got Pacino on the radio in the SUV. And when I listened closely, I said, Anna, lean in, because you can hear his Bronx accent. And in movies, you don't always pick it up because he changes his character. But I learned about his childhood and growing up with his mom and his dad and his best friends, things I'd never heard of before. And what they say, Terry, is the more you hear somebody else's story, I shouldn't say what they say. This is rooted in my doctoral research. And I'm looking into masks and identity as part of my critical lens of my work. I should explain this so the audience understands. When I was accepted for my doctoral degree, I submitted all my public work. So everything I had done, I have an education company, Terry, where I have coaching programs, a diploma, 1-year program, things like that. Then I have my book, which thank God Morgan James believed in it. And then I have my podcast collection, almost 300 episodes now, 1-hour episodes. Now, here's the thing. I have to send it to the university, and they put it to a panel of professors and an external examiner. And what they do is they look at it and they come back and tell you, Tom Dutta or Terry Whalin, we believe that your work has made an impact on the world, and therefore we're inviting you to critique it. And they accepted me on my work. I was like looking behind me like, are you talking to me? Because I'm just this young guy who fell into fame because of others. I was standing on the greatness of you. So the podcast interview I'm doing here now, for example, with you, Terry, will be part of what I critique, trying to find a deeper meaning. So, in that work I'm doing on masks and identity, that's one of the things I'm critiquing my work through. It's coming up loud and clear that I'm doing this dance in my public work with other people. Here I am interviewing you, and unless I do this dance, this thing I do with you, I can't learn more about myself. For example, you'll say something and it causes my brain to pause and look deeper inside and bring up something familiar that maybe I didn't bring up before. And I'm on a tangent here, but here's why you're such a great man and what work you're doing. Everybody needs to check you out and it out. That somebody said to me a long time ago, and this is very true. If you read my book, I don't care if it's a bestseller. I do care, but it doesn't matter to me. I know if somebody tells me that it triggered something in them, it unlocked a thought pattern that made their life better, made them change path, then my work is worth it. And if I didn't tell my story through my book, through my platform, I wouldn't be changing lives just like you're doing. The other one I listen to is Bono, the U2 singer. And I forgot the title, Terry, but what's cool about that one, everyone, is Terry, he actually sings in it, and he's telling wild stories that I'd never known about the guy's background, which is pretty amazing. So thank you for dropping those nuggets on us. So as we move to wrap up, I have one more thing I wanted to ask you in Plato's Garden, and then I'm going to honor you a couple things. That we'll call this the legacy question, or get you going here. So just think about this. So with everything you've done, Terry, and how you're impacting and changing the world, if you could offer one piece of advice to an author, or say even to me, or no, it wouldn't be me. Sorry. A new author. Somebody's just beginning the journey today. They're going to pick up the phone and call you. So I need to talk to you. What's that advice with the dream of making a meaningful impact? This person wants to make an impact in the world. What advice do you give them?
Yeah, Tom, a great question. I think the advice I give them is to maybe not start with a book. Everybody wants to write books because books are really permanent and important and all that. But if your book throughout the lifetime of the book sells 5,000 copies, that would be good. What instead I invite people to do is to consider writing for a print magazine. If you write for a print magazine, which is what I've done, over 50 magazines, I kind of quit counting after a while. I've written way more than 50 magazines. But if you write a short magazine article, you've written 1,000, 1,500 words. It's easier to do. You learn how to have a beginning, a middle, and end, how to have a key point. We call that a takeaway in the business so that the reader comes away with something, how to have a good title. And with that magazine article, it's pretty easy to reach 100,000 people, 200,000, 500,000 people with your magazine article.
Wow.
And so that can lead to your book if you want to at the end, but that's a valuable way for you to get started as a writer, no matter what you're doing. And the key place that I encourage everybody to start is with a personal experience article, because all of us have strange experiences, like with our family or when we travel, or whatever it is that's different. Write those things down. Write the dialogue down. Write the little story. Have
Very
a
cool.
middle, end, takeaway. Send it out to a magazine, and you might have to send it out a few times to find the right magazine.
Yeah.
But you'll learn something through that process, and it'll get you going in this whole publishing world.
Well, I mean, talk about a nugget. That's the first time I've heard that put that way. And, it makes total sense. I put it on the screen here, everybody, right, for a print magazine. Hey, Terry, if people wanted to, if they had no clue where to go, what magazine, is there lists of magazines or things you recommend, or how does one figure that out?
Well, for one thing, what do they read themselves, for one thing? What magazines are those? Take a look at those and see if they publish the type of articles that you want to write. Or you can just go to the library and get a writer's market, or there's a book called the Christian Writer's Market Guide if you write for the Christian market. I just got a notice yesterday that the 2005 Christian Writer's Market Guide is going to come out next month, for example. So, you need a new one of those books, because that's why you go to the library or something, or buy one, because those addresses and emails and the information about it changes from year to year. So you want to get a good reference book, but use that reference book and, write some places, send out stuff, get it out.
I love it. Everybody, what a great piece of advice. And then, if you look at my website, I've got my bio there, but I'm thinking out loud here, Terry, that once you've been published in a magazine, you add that. And if you walk on stage and you're doing a public talk, they can introduce you. And Tom's been published in, Forbes magazine or blah, blah, blah. What a great piece of advice, Terry. And so giving. As a literary agent, most agents will say, no, you got to send me your mail. You got to do a book with me. And here's Terry saying, you know what? The first thing you should try write for a print magazine. I just love that, Terry. Let's go to one more thing. Put this back up on the screen here. Everyone, I'm just showing you again to connect with Terry. We'll put this in the show notes when we do the audio and the video version. But again, getting Terry connect to get the publishing this book for $10. Follow Terry on Twitter. Get on that blog, everyone, if you want to learn about writing and read some great stuff. And a free copy of book proposals that sell. I think that's a good one, too. So let's take that off the screen. Going to finish up with honoring you, my friend, for being here with us. A little pad of paper. People have seen me do this show after show. I write down leadership words. They just come out of my head as I'm meeting you again. There's 4 of them that I'll attach to this show. The first one is Maven. There's a book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell.
Sure.
You're nodding, and everyone, if you haven't read it, he says there's two types of people in there, and if you can find somebody who is both these together, that person is powerful. So Maven is somebody, like, if I want to know how do I get going as a published author, or what do I do next, you go to Terry. He knows everything. Second word is connector, the other word from the Outliers book, Terry. A connector is someone who knows people, and maybe through first or second degree, but you can call them up and say, hey, Terry, I need to do this. And Terry's like, I think I know a guy, or I can connect you to this. So you're a maven and a connector, very powerful. Number 3 is leader. Everything you're doing, Terry, I'm honored to have you on the show again, but you're leading the way. My definition of a leader is somebody who creates other leaders. Somebody builds trust and respect, rapport, and then others will follow because you can connect to their heart. You did that. 4 is humility. There's so much to your work, and you're very humble, but it shows. But that's why I'm encouraging everybody to get a hold of you and check out everything you have, because you're somebody to follow. You've done it all. And on that, let's give it to you for the last word, Terry. Anything at all you want to say to the audience?
Well, I just appreciate the opportunity, Tom. I'm one of the few journalists in the country that have interviewed best-selling author Chuck Swindoll, for example. And I sat with Chuck and had lunch with him. And one of the things he told me during that lunch is something that I think about as I meet maybe a famous or even a common, person that's not famous. Chuck told me that there are no heroes in the body of Christ. We're all like a bunch of guys in the back of a pickup truck trying to get our stuff together. And that's how I think of myself. It's not that I've done anything great, but I've had great opportunities. And so when those opportunities come, I take a simple step. I move forward and take action on those opportunities. Because what I find going to conferences and meeting with authors all the time, I'll encourage them to send me their work. Maybe only 10, 15% will actually follow through and do that. And I don't know what happened to them, whether they, had something happen in their personal life or whatever, but they just don't send it to me, even though I ask for it, I follow up, all that.
Yeah.
So if you're a part of that 10% that actually takes action and seizes the opportunities around you, the world's open to you, is what I tell you. You just have to go for it.
What a great and inspiring message, Terry. Everybody come back, teaching moment, listen to this part, write it down. The world is waiting for you. Man, in the difficult world that we have, the world is waiting for us. We all needed to hear that. What a great message of hope. I'm going to ask people to go back into my podcast page and find the first interview we did. Reason why Terry's there, we dug deep into you even more as a human being. Something that drives you, man. And people can learn about it in that because you told that story. And I just wanted to say thank you for being here. We'll have you back again. You're writing something else now too. A little shameless plug. What are you up to there?
Oh, I've got a crazy deadline, Tom. It's a 50,000 word book that's due in less than a month here on December 15th. So, people wonder, how in the world have you written over 60 books? And the answer is simple. I write it just like everybody else. I write it one page, one paragraph at a time. But I have to be consistently writing on this book every day, or I'm not going to meet my December 15th deadline. So
I love it.
I'm still doing it. Everybody can do it.
Yeah. What's it about, just generally, without giving away all your goods?
The book is a series of 90 Bible stories that are really connected to the reader through a devotion. And they're really about Bible characters who have made a change or a transformation, a pivot in their life. And so
very cool.
That's what the focus of the book is. Yeah.
Well, you have to I want you to make a promise publicly that you'll sign a copy for me, and we'll get you back to talk about it when it's out. I will read it. I will read it. All right, everybody. I'm going to put back on the screen here as we do the bumper and we're leaving the show. I'm going to flash some of Terry's contact information again. Take a photograph, screenshot, whatever you want, and please connect. Terry, thank you again for being here. You are a quiet warrior, and you're doing incredible work. We'll talk to you again.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, everybody. find that true passion like comes out of Terry every minute he speaks, and live that life that you deserve and desire. We'll see you all again on the Quiet Warrior Show, everybody. I can't wait to have this man back again. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca.
Okay, stand by, Terry. We're going to take it off stream here. We're still live.